everyone. Welcome, welcome. It's so lovely to see all of you popping on. It's really exciting to spend this next hour together. So, of course, I'm Dara Thomason. I am the life coach for quilters, the weight loss coach for quilters. It's so much fun to be so specific in how I help people. I'm so clear on who you are and how I can help you. It's amazing to be able to share this hour or so with you. I might go just a little bit over depending on questions. I want to encourage you to be really interactive in this training. So there is a chat feature on your screen and you can just type in. I'm going to be asking you, first of all, like, where are you from? I'm seeing some new names on here. So welcome, welcome. It's wonderful to see you. I definitely encourage you right now to take the settings on your phone and turn them off and give yourself an opportunity to really just focus on what I'm teaching you here. And I definitely encourage you to have a notebook and a pen. There is going to be a recording that will be sent in your email box if you're on my email list. Also, you can find all my free trainings on my YouTube channel. So I encourage you to go over there. If you haven't subscribed already to my YouTube channel, I encourage you to do that. I have lots of really good content. And in fact, I have a lot of good content at the beginning of my YouTube of all my quilting stuff. So when I was helping long armors and helping them learn free motion quilting, and that was really fun. So if you want some quilt eye candy and some instruction, my YouTube, you can go at the beginning and you can watch that. But I'm really helping people with their minds. And the more we can work on our minds, the more productivity we can have in our quilting and in our life in general. So that is what I do. I help quilters to lose the weight, to keep it off, and to have way more joy in their life. And in fact, I have a really fun pop-up group I'm going to talk about at the end of my webinar. So be prepared for that. I just did one recently and it was incredible. And this one is going to just keep giving you so much value. Okay, so let's get started. So today's topic is on anxiety. So, is anxiety and worry weighing you down? Now, I am a weight loss coach, but I'm telling you, one of the things that happens with anxiety is we will turn to food. And I'm going to talk a little bit later about this vicious cycle that gets very confusing for people about anxiety and weight gain and all of that. Okay. So be prepared for that section. But first of all, I'm going to just explain a little bit about anxiety and why it's happening. So if I was to ask you in the chat, you don't have to share that at all, but I want you just to think in your brain, how much of the day do you feel anxiety? So however you define anxiety, how much of your day do you feel maybe that pit in your stomach, whatever that is? So this is probably why you came to this webinar, because you want to wake up feeling happy. You want to not be concerned about what other people think of you. You want to feel carefree in the world without the news. So right now in the world, the news is there's a lot of stuff going on, and we're kind of still hanging on to a pandemic worldwide pandemic that's never happened in our own life's history. And so, do you want to be carefree when you turn the news on, when you see bombs and people attacking each other, all of those kinds of things that are happening? You want to not be afraid to turn on the news. You want to step on the scale so you do want to step on the scale with self-love and compassion. And you want to be comfortable in your own skin. That used to be my problem. I just thought, I just want to be comfortable in my own skin. And the problem was I thought that I had to have a certain number on the scale to feel comfortable in my own skin. I got very confused. I have spent a lot of time being influenced by media saying the only way you can be acceptable is if you weigh a certain amount. Okay. So I just thought, oh, I'll be happy when. How often have you said that? I'll be happy when I weigh a certain amount. I'll be happy when I have a certain amount of money in the bank. I'll be happy when my house looks a certain way. I'll be happy when my children are successful. I'll be happy when my husband can read my mind. Okay. So I really want you to ask yourself that question, because I'm going to tell you right now, the only way that you can truly change is if you get to accept yourself the way you are right now. That's just like, you cannot lose weight and have the kind of life that you want until you can accept yourself for how you are right now. I'm just going to tell you that. Write that down. That is truth. Okay. So if you have been trying to lose weight and trying to change your life from not accepting who you are and how you are right now, that's why you haven't changed. Just to let you know. Okay. And you want to feel ease in your life. So if this is what you want, you are in the right place, because I'm going to tell you, my friends, of how it's going to happen. All right. I haven't looked at the chat. I'm just going to open up the chat because I do like this to be interactive, and I'm going to ask you to make comments, because I do really love that. All right. So what have you tried to reduce anxiety? So have you tried diets, self-help books, getting others' approval by saying yes, putting others' needs before your own, thinking if I can make everyone else around me really happy, then I can be happy. Okay. But that's called people pleasing. And when you don't get your own back, then we have a lot of deficit, right? We have a very, so you're putting others' needs before your own. You stay really busy to distract yourself. You're like, I don't really like my life, so I'll just stay really, really busy and not worry about it so much. You hide from your troubles by spending a lot of time doing, okay. So in the chat, you can share it. How often are you spending more time on social media than you want? How often are you spending a lot of time doing some Netflix or Hulu, or there's lots of other ones, or just even general cable TV, or constantly listening to the radio, or like news stations, right? It feels very important. Spending a lot of time eating, making food, preparing food, thinking about food, planning food, fantasizing about food. Okay. Or shopping. How much time do we spend doing these things, trying to hide from our child? Because there's nothing wrong with shopping, eating, watching Netflix, or being on social media. There's nothing wrong with those things. But if we're using those to hide from our life, that's when it becomes a problem. Okay. So if you were to pick your poison, and you don't have to share if you don't want to, but I'm encouraging you, of those things, and when you think about how do you hide from your life, what does it usually look like? Okay. So these haven't worked because you're hiding from the real problem. You don't have an awareness of the real problem. You haven't learned the tools to deal with it. And I'm going to be talking about anxiety right away. So just stay with me. You're not aware, or you're not conscious of what's actually going on. You don't really know who you are, because you've been living through other people's eyes, because you care more about what other people think of you than what you think of yourself. And so as you're going through the day, you're thinking, what can I do to get other people's approval, rather than what can I do to get my own approval? So when you're living through other people's eyes, you actually don't even know who you are. I have a lot of clients who have lived for everyone else. They went from being a daughter, a sister, to being a good student, to getting married and being a good wife, and then having children, being a good mother. And now they're either a grandma or they're retiring, and they don't even know who they are, because they have been living for other people through other people's eyes for so long that they don't even really know who they are. Okay, so I want you just to think about that. And where do you fall in this area? Now, we're going to start looking at anxiety, because that's why we're here, and that's what we're going to be talking about today. Okay, so what is anxiety? I want to understand it. So did you know that anxiety is just a feeling that causes a vibration in our body? It is. And it is actually usually a strong feeling because anxiety, kind of like I talked about last week about cortisol, if we don't have cortisol, we wouldn't survive. We actually really need cortisol to have that healthy balance because cortisol is helping us trigger that fight or flight response. Okay. So I like to think maybe like anxiety is almost like an attack, right? If you sat on attack or a fire, like you don't want to burn your fire, so that you have a quick reaction. It's like, oh, I don't want to burn my finger, right? When you light a candle and you're holding it or something. So anxiety is like a really strong vibration that triggers our fight and flight response. So I want you to think of the last time that you felt anxiety. Okay, so this is where I do want your help in the chat. So let's just think of what is a circumstance that causes you anxiety. So would it be the news? Would it be maybe money? I know one of my clients is building her dream house and the cost of supplies has gone up dramatically that they actually had to totally rechange. They had to change like the whole new plan because the house was just too big. They just couldn't afford it. And so they had to come up with a different house plan. Okay. So if you were to say in the chat, what is something, a circumstance, when you think about like go to your last experience of feeling anxiety in your life, it could be this morning, it could be even getting onto the Zoom call. I'm not sure. But I want you to think what could be a circumstance that causes you anxiety. Okay, let's give you guys, ladies, a chance to put in a thought. There's lots of you ladies on here. Would you say, okay, I'll get you started. What about, let's think, the news. Let's just say, how many of us have been triggered by the news lately? Because the news is just people say words on and report them on the radio or on TV. Okay, so then what could be a thought that could create the feeling of anxiety? So we're going to have a feeling because that's an actual feeling. The thought is, what could be a thought? Preparing for Mother's Day. Yes, that was some anxiety there. Preparing for Mother's Day, shopping, cooking, having everything nice. Yes. Okay. Because even for that one, let's just go there. So circumstances, Mother's Day. Thank you, Mary. Mother's Day. And the thought is shopping, cooking, have everything nice. I need to be prepared and have everything nice. So when you have that thought, she's going to anxiety, okay? And when out of anxiety, what actions do we take? Do we make lists and more lists? We worry about what others think. So we question ourselves. All right, so does this sound all familiar? Are there any other actions that you take? So when you're like making lists and more lists and worrying about what other people think and questioning yourself and maybe like thinking back, you maybe think about like times in the past that didn't go very well. So you're replaying all the old tapes of things that were not so good. Then what actually happens? What is the result of all of that? So when we spend our time spending time in worry and questioning ourselves and doubt and stressing out, we don't enjoy the time. Okay, it doesn't become an enjoyable time. So do you see how a thought creates a feeling, and then that feeling, we react from that feeling, and then that creates the result that we have in life. All right. So we're just gonna go a little bit more take a historical look at what anxiety does, okay? So anxiety is actually harmless. It is. And it's very helpful because back in the day, our ancestors, there was a lot of things we had to be careful of. Like even a rusty nail or a certain animal like rabies. If you had like a crazy animal bite you, you could die. If you got a rusty nail, you could die. If we didn't have a proper midwife or something for a baby, we could die. Like there were so many more dangers. We had buffalo, and we didn't have secure housing, and there was a shortage of food. We were completely dependent on the weather, and so to have anxiety, we had this. It would give us this fight or flight response. So we had a heightened sense of safety. And when we did that, when we responded, we were able to respond very quickly. We were on guard, we were alert. Okay? So there's nothing wrong with anxiety. In fact, it's actually very helpful because it gave us information. It like taps us on the shoulder and says, hey, did you know that if you don't collect all these berries right now, even though it's really hot and you don't want to collect these berries, if you don't do that, you could die. It's like, oh, hey, you've been hunting for 2 days and you haven't found any food yet, but if you don't keep going, you could die and your family could die, right? So it was actually really very helpful to us. And it was like a motivator. But now the problem is when we resist it, when we react or show resistance, that's where it comes up and is very harmful. So now we're in 2021, and what dangers do we have? Do we have the same kind of dangers? Not so much. We have houses, we have endless supply of food, and even when you think about that food, we have refined flour and sugar that it's like a power pack, right? It gives us so much fuel. I mean, we can have one cinnamon bun and that could last us for a long time. Okay. So the thing is, our brain is wired to look for dangers and look for potential problems. But these have now changed. They're not life threatening like they were before. So people's thoughts about us. And remember, we are wired to not be rejected, because if we were rejected, right, and we didn't have a very secure house, or if the weather was really bad, we could maybe have others combine their food sources and we could survive. Okay. And so we have things like we worry about fitting in, about what other people think of us, and like our kids' grades, for example, and maybe like a promotion at work. And we just make everything that much worse. So that's all that's happening. So anxiety is actually harmless. It's actually very helpful. When it's harmful is when we react or show resistance to it. Now, one of the things that we need to do is, first of all, we need to actually recognize anxiety for what it is. Now, remember when bullying was all the rage and we just talked about bullying all the time, bully this, bully that? And so our kids kind of got this misunderstanding of like, if someone said anything bad to us, like they didn't pick you on the team, you're like, he was a bully. But really, he was just being a kid that decided that they wanted to pick somebody else. So one of the problems that we have is that labels can be very dangerous. And so right now, anxiety is quite a buzzword. So what we need to do is, and we actually realize that anxiety is actually a secondary emotion. So when we are having anxiety about something, and I'm going to go to Hope Road with you, Worry Road. I'm going to tell you why and how it's happening more and more for us in our society. Especially, I think when you talk to most people, a lot of people will say, how are you feeling? Like, oh, I have a lot of anxiety. So what I want to do is, we're going to talk about how we have this emotional awareness. But so anxiety is a secondary emotion. We've got to dig a little bit deeper to what is the core emotion. One of the things also that's happening with us in today's world is we have we have a very low tolerance for pain. We have a very low ability to really look at like for example, yeah, our tolerance for discomfort is low. So kind of like when I help my clients learn about hunger, and it's very interesting because at the beginning, they are so afraid to feel hunger. They're like, because we have been conditioned. So as soon as you feel hunger, it's like go get a snack, go satisfy that, right? We can be driving, and it's like we can go to a fast food place immediately. It's like we have really conditioned ourselves to have this discomfort um, with with any sort of, we don't want any discomfort. Even with our kids, they come home from school and they're like, oh, this happened at school. It's like, do we want to immediately go and solve the problem for them, and we don't want them to have any discomfort? Whereas really, that's how they build self-confidence, is they learn how to do their own problem solving. Okay. So the problem, so we've got this issue with we call anxiety like a buzzword. Now, so we've got to learn about our emotions, and anxiety is a secondary emotion. We have kind of this intolerance of pain. And so even like in an air conditioned car, right? We want to have it perfect temperature. We fuss about the temperature. Okay. Now, I do want to recognize that there are biological factors that do give us anxiety. And so we have thoughts that create emotions, but we can also have biological factors that are chemicals and hormones that can create anxiety. So our feelings come from our thoughts, and I don't have all the answers for why some people may have a chemical or hormonal imbalance. And I'm not saying that so for example, if you don't have very good eyesight and you're not seeing, there's no reason why you shouldn't go see a doctor, even if you have to be dependent on glasses for the rest of your life. So I'm not saying that you shouldn't go see a clinical specialist to subscribe medication for you. So that definitely, and I don't have all the answers for that. I don't exactly understand why some people may have chemical and hormonal imbalances than others. Okay, so that's not the kind of anxiety I'm talking about today. But I want to tell you that the work that I do with my clients is that they are starting to learn that our thoughts do create our feelings, and then we operate out of our feelings. And so just like with my clients with weight loss, I say, okay, we're going to get rid of flour and sugar for a while, because we're going to start discovering what's really going on in our body. And we're going to reduce inflammation, and we're going to work on our insulin. We're going to help ourselves out. So that is the approach I'm taking with anxiety. Okay. And so Mariana Plata from Psychology Today said, the earlier we can recognize the signs in our bodies as feelings that need to be expressed, and the better we become at accurately identifying them, the better our chances at learning how to manage them. So that's what I'm talking about. So if you are on medication, or you're having these chemical and hormonal imbalances that feel out of control, absolutely 100% go see a clinical specialist. But from my experience, and even I have clients who do have, they do take medication for anxiety. And what I say to them is, when you learn these strategies that I'm teaching you in my program, you will reduce the amount of anxiety you feel, because you now have strategies. So I really want you to keep that in mind as you're listening to this. And one of the things that I do also want to encourage you is, when you come to my free trainings, which are amazing, and I'm so happy that you're here, you are getting a lot of value from me. Your mind is being opened, and you are seeing things in a new way. But and that's wonderful. That's great. Welcome. I'm so glad. And I encourage you to go to my YouTube channel to watch all my free trainings. They're amazing. I give so much value away. But there is something to be said about actually putting the coaching tools in play, into practice, because you're the one who's going to create these changes for yourself. You're the one who's going to start learning to recognize the signs. And I can show you your thoughts and I can help you with the tools, but until you start doing this work and actually applying it, that's when you get the transformation. So kudos for being here. I love that you're here. I have a lot of my clients, they come to these free trainings. They're always like, Dara, you're blowing my mind. These are so amazing. Yes, of course. But I want to just let you know, I'm just opening the door for you a little bit. When you actually come into my program and you actually learn to apply the tools, that's when your life can just completely change. And clients who are on here, they can testify to that. All right. All right, so we're going to take a little bit of a closer look here. So that's my magnifying glass. So anxiety, as we know, it's a fight or flight response. So if you are scanning the, I always think about my ancestors who they settled the West. So some of them went to Utah, some of them went to Alberta. They were pioneers. They literally built their own houses. They literally, made their own fabric and all of that. Okay. They were pioneers and they had to scan all of their environment to make sure it was safe for themselves and their children. Okay. So I want you to go a little bit deeper. So if you say that you have a lot of anxiety, I want you to really see what's actually going on. So we're going to try on some feelings. So just like we try on clothes when we go shopping, it's the same thing. We want to try on different feelings. Now, not only is our pain tolerance low, our emotional tolerance, but we also have very low emotional awareness. And that's why we have poor emotional wellness. So there's an amazing podcast that was written by a professor at Yale. It's called The Happiness Lab. And Yale, of course, has the cream of the crop. It has the top of American and Canadian, world-class students there. And this professor was noticing that all of these students, so many more students that have anxiety, and they are like the cream of the cream of the cream of the crop. And so she really got curious about what was going on. And so many of our kids and us today, we have such low emotional wellness because we have this low emotional vocabulary that is just not developed. And because we have this intolerance for pain, we want to fix something right away. So we want to put a quick label on it and say, give me some medicine or whatever it is. Okay. So just like the women I work with perimenopause and menopause, there's a lot of confusion. It's like, let's just, take out certain body parts, give you the birth control pill or whatever, and let's just throw a bunch of things together and see if that's going to work. Or let's just numb us enough or whatever it is. Okay. I'm not going to go into that today. But when we don't allow ourselves to increase our emotional capacity, our understanding, we do not have this emotional wellness that we need to operate, to be our best version of ourselves. So just like we're trying on a sweater or a shirt or pants, we're going to try on some emotions. So remember when I asked you to give an example of the last time you felt anxiety? This is where I want you to do. Was it actually anxiety or was it fear? Did you have indecision? Was it restlessness, shame, impatience, overwhelm, confusion, disappointment, loneliness, boredom? So as I'm saying these words, I want you to really actively participate with me, okay? Stay with me, participate. Let's do this. Was I feel anxious? Was I feeling anxiety, or did I have fear? Or was I feeling frustrated? Maybe I was feeling inadequate, or maybe I was feeling uncertainty. Maybe I was feeling sadness or heartbreak or anger. Oh, maybe I was annoyed. Maybe there was some jealousness there or envy. Maybe I was experiencing some self-doubt, or maybe I was just super embarrassed. Okay. So isn't that interesting that when we actually look at these words, there was probably one or two that were like, oh yeah, that's totally me. Okay. Another thing that I do is so let's say I went through this list. So think about that example you gave and think about this list. And maybe you're like, I'm not sure if I was annoyed or if I was irritated. Okay. So you can actually go to the dictionary. I do this with my clients and we look up the words because there's nuances that we have in our mind of these things. And so when we can go to the dictionary and we can actually pinpoint the emotion that thought caused, then we can get so much insight on what's going on for us and we can start really solving our own problems. I'm telling you, when we can operate from our higher brain and we're not in that fight or flight response, because when you think about fight or flight, it's like we're tense, we're ready for action, we're guarded. Okay. So when we can actually be in our higher brain, which by the way, our higher brain always wants to solve problems for us. So let's say, for example, you kind of have this situation and you're like, oh, I don't know what to do. And you kind of are thinking about it. Your higher brain wants to solve problems. So how often do you wake up at like 3 a.m. You're like, that's what I should do. Okay. Or it remembers something because your higher brain wants the best for you. But if we're staying in our lower brain, if we're doing we're staying in this tension, because I say when emotions are high, intelligence is low. So also when we resist and avoid, then that we also have a problem. Okay. This is really so helpful. Oh my goodness. Okay. So remember how I said anxiety is most likely it's a secondary emotion. So you can put any negative emotion here. A lot of times it's fear. Okay. So you put fear, and if you are avoiding, resisting, or reacting to it, then we actually get to worst case scenario. Now, these are billboards. So if you went to my procrastination class, I talked about this is one of my strategies I taught. So these are billboards saying things like people might not like you. People might not agree with you, or you could possibly be wrong and they could make fun of you. Whatever that is. Okay. You could, if you're wrong, you could feel terrible or whatever. Okay. You can fail. You failed in the past. You haven't had success. That's the kinds of things that are on the billboards. You're not that kind of person. You haven't had that success. So what makes you think you can do it now? Just stop dreaming. It's not worth it. Okay. These are those terrible thoughts. Now, if you're avoiding, resisting, or reacting to that emotion of fear or or like disappointment or doubt, it actually leads you to your worst case scenario. And how I explain anxiety to my clients, I say anxiety is when you stay in your worst case scenario. And so of course you feel stuck and you don't have an option. That's what anxiety is, being in your worst case scenario. Now, I got you. Okay. Now you can know if you're doing this, if you are avoiding. So this is how you know. You ignore, maybe you drink, maybe you overwork, maybe you over social media, maybe you're not being, so when you do these things, so that's called buffering, right? You're going outside of you to try to feel better, or you're hiding from yourself. So you're ignoring yourself, right? And you're using things to distract, or busyness, whatever that is, people pleasing, perfectionism. Those are all ways of avoiding. You're not being in who you are. That's why people can be 67 years old and they don't even know who they are. It's amazing to me. They're like, I don't even know who I am, because they're so busy ignoring themselves. They're so busy avoiding themselves. They've been going outside of themselves to try to feel better inside. Okay. So the problem is now you're not being present in your own life. So you don't know who you are. And you most likely you've gained weight. Now, this is that vicious cycle I was going to talk about. So you eat because you feel out of control, and then you eat some more, and that causes anxiety. This can start anywhere. You can feel anxious. You don't want to feel anxious. So
So then you eat. And then when you eat, you feel out of control, and then you eat some more, right? You see, so the problem is a lot of people think, well, if I lost the weight, then I wouldn't have to feel anxious anymore. So that's why a lot of ladies, they will lose the weight and then they'll just put it right back on again because they're like, oh, I did all that work and I lost all that weight and I still don't feel good. So I might as well eat the cookies. That's why we have roller coaster dieting. In my pop-up group, FYI, it's called the 1% Club because 1% of all humans lose the weight and keep it off. I want you to join me in the 1% Club. We're going to talk about this, okay? So you know that if you're resisting, because you're in anxiety, because you're staying in your worst case scenario, it's going to look like this. You push away, you fight against it, you get mad at yourselves, and you get tense. So how much time do you spend in this kind of space in your life? Okay. Now react. If you are reacting and you don't want to, you say, I don't want to feel it. I don't want to feel it. I don't want to feel it. Whatever negative emotion, this is what it looks like. You rush around. You yell at people. So you have a very short fuse. You try to control everything. I call that being a control enthusiast. And you stay up late. This is how you fuel yourself, okay? The fuel. Not fool, but you are kind of fooling yourself, right? So if you're always in reaction mode and you're not allowing yourself just to process the emotion, this is what your life looks like. You're reacting to. You're not taking any responsibility. So this is my solution. Are you ready? You got your pens ready? Okay, this is what we do. I'm going to give you 3 things you need to do to solve for this. You need to accept it. It's like, yeah, I feel some anxiety. I feel some disappointment. I feel some discouragement. I feel some doubt. I just feel it. So what I have my clients do is I literally just say, put your hand on your heart and say, I'm feeling some stress. I'm feeling some self-doubt. I'm feeling some irritation. So the reason I say to put your hand on your heart is because our brain has thoughts and it releases chemicals, right? Like if you feel stressed, like if you're late for something, your heart starts to beat really fast. You might start sweating because your body's like, we gotta go, we gotta go, we gotta go. Like quick energy, let's go. Okay. Even fear, like if we're walking down a road in the dark and we hear somebody, we see like a shadow of someone, it's like our senses are heightened, right? We're ready to move. We're ready to go. That's because we have a thought and chemicals are released in our brain and they affect our body. We have a physiological response to a thought that is already wired in our body. So when we can take a physical hand and say, I feel this thing, we are connecting now with our thoughts and our body. It's just an added bonus in helping us have that connection. I teach this in my program. It's so powerful. So we pause and name it. I'm feeling doubt. We locate in our body. Oh my goodness, I feel it. Oh, it's right heavy in my chest. It feels like an elephant is like stepping on my chest. It's hard to breathe. Oh, okay. I find it in my body. And then you're like, what are you even saying, Dara? You relax into it. You're like, oh, problem solved. I had the thought. I acknowledge the emotion of doubt. I feel it, or I feel shame in my chest. It's like really heavy. I'm so smart. I figured it out. I just relax into it. Okay. And then I remember what it means. So I remember, oh yes, that's right. I have a thought. And when I have a thought, it creates an emotion. And then when I have that emotion, I have a physical response. So if you see like a baby, for example, a brand new baby, like, oh, she's so sweet. You have a physical response. It's like, oh, right? You just feel like love and like just wonder or awe, whatever that emotion is. So it's only because we have a thought and our thoughts create emotions. That's like how our body is wired. It's like a computer program, okay? What's kept us alive. It's what helps us be humans. So we just remember that, oh, that's right. I have a thought, and when I have a thought, it creates an emotion, and that emotion is located somewhere in my body. It's not a problem. Okay? I mean, think about it too. Like when you had a baby, and that baby cried at 3 a.m, and then cried at 4 a.m, and then cried, you're like, you have so much love for that baby that you're willing to get out of your nice warm bed and go take care of that baby. Because you have that emotion, because you have the thought, I love this baby. And then you have a physical response that it's going to lead you into action. And then we just repeat that. Okay. So we accept that this is what's happening in our body. We pause and name it. Just put your hand on that's what I tell my clients to do. We locate it in our body. We're like, where is that? And generally speaking, it's kind of in our core, but pardon me. We locate our body, we relax into it. I actually like to have my clients like describe it. So I would say like, where is it in your body? Describe it in your body, relax into it. Just like, yeah, this is me being a human. This is what humans do. Thank you so much for letting me know. And then you remember what it means, that we just have a thought that creates an emotion. And then that emotion, there's like a corresponding place in our body that we process that emotion. It's not a problem. Then we repeat it. And we just keep doing this. Now, one of the things you might ask me is, well, if we know that all of our feelings come from our thoughts, why can't we just make sure we have all the right thoughts that we want to have? Well, there's this concept I talked about last week of the 50-50 rule. To have a well-balanced life, we need to acknowledge that we are going to have negative things, because if we don't have negative, then we actually don't have positive, because we don't have the contrast. Just like if we didn't have darkness, we actually wouldn't know what light is. We wouldn't have the opposite to know. Just like black or white. It's like we wouldn't have any color differentiation if we didn't have the contrast. Okay. Now we have about 60,000 thoughts a day. So we could do thought downloads and we could do the tools. Like for example, it's time to clean toilets. So I did get a really great toilet cleaner for Mother's Day for every toilet in my house. And so I could do a whole bunch of thought downloads and say, oh, toilets, this and that. Or I can just be like, yeah, it's toilet time. Don't really like it, but that's okay. I'm just going to quickly do it, have it over with, maybe feel some discomfort. It's not my favorite thing, but I'm just going to go for it. Okay. Because I have a human brain. And that's actually part of having a human brain, right? We have some discomfort. And then I also think one of my favorite things to think about is when I can truly feel fear. What is the opposite of fear? Courage. So if I think, oh, yes, I'm going to just let myself feel fear. Whew, here it is, my body. So now I can have the opposite. I can feel courage and I can be so courageous. And that's wonderful. Okay, this one's going to be really fun for me to hear from you later. Okay, are you going to like promise me that you're going to like do this and like play around with it and experiment and then let me know how it goes? Okay, I love hearing back from all of you. I love having that feedback because I'm telling you, this is what really changes things for all of us. So I'm going to tell you, when you have this discomfort, and you can label that emotion. So some of us have just labeled it flat out anxiety, and that's okay. We're just going to like increase our emotional awareness, which is going to then increase our emotional wellness. So this is a radio, and this is the volume. So I want you, there's going to be two things I'm going to teach you in this step. The first one is we're just going to say, oh, I'm going to plan in my schedule anxiety time. So I have like lunchtime, dinner time, dressing time, showering time, brushing teeth time, talking to husband time, um, being on social media time. And I'm just going to plan anxiety time. Yeah, I'm just going to do it from like 10 to 10:15. It's just like, that's my anxiety time. And this, I'm just going to go to my worst case scenario. I'm going to put my timer on for 15 minutes and I'm just going to let myself just go to worst case scenario. That's it. And I'm going to just really just let myself feel like all the anxiety on purpose. I'm going to let my stomach go like really uncomfortable. It's going to like toss and turn, or it's going to like squeeze and be knotted. And I'm just going to let myself do that. Yeah, it's anxiety time. And I'm just going to stay in my worst case scenario. I'm not going to push it away. None of that. Just like, yeah, yeah, there I am. Whew. It's like you're putting on a movie, right? Think about it. When we watch movies, I mean, my daughter and I went and saw Little Women in the theater last 2 Christmases ago. And we cried and cried and cried. Like, we paid money to go and we were crying and then we were laughing and then we were crying and then our heart was aching. We're like, no, Joe, what are you doing? Right? But our body, like our brain was like feeling all the emotions, but it wasn't even real. But we paid money to go and have like our heart like ripped out of our chest and all of that. Because it was just like, we just want our brain to go somewhere else. So what would it be like just to allow anxiety to be like, oh yeah, I'm just going to my worst case scenario. I'm going to like go in there. I'm going to see what's going on. I'm not going to push it away. I'm just going to be there. Like, when I say that, I really want you to like, I would love to hear your thoughts on that. Like, what's going on in your brain? Because what if we just decided, it's like, yeah, we just do that sometimes. We just feel anxiety. It's no problem. So the next one is, so when you're in that anxiety time, you can actually just turn up the volume. You're going to increase or decrease it. You're like, oh, okay, I'm going to really just like put some fire, some fuel on the fire. I'm just going to like, just really exasperate that. And I'm going to decrease it a little bit. And then I'm going to put a little bit more. And so you're literally just like, it's like Play-Doh, right? You're just like, yeah, like this is my worst case scenario. And I'm just going to just kind of play with it. So I wanted to share it. It was very interesting when I was reading about this and preparing this. And as I think about this with my clients. So when I was a new mom, I probably would have been diagnosed with anxiety because I worried about my kids choking all the time. I worried about my kids drowning in the bathtub. And I would bring up like news stories that I heard about and different experiences where the mother was like, the kid was in the high chair and she just went to the kitchen for just like 2 seconds to grab something. And she came back and the kid was dead. Right? So I played those worst case scenarios in my brain. But I actually just allowed myself, I would just say to myself, of course you are feeling this way. You have this brand new baby human that you love. So of course you want to keep it safe. Just like if we went, back in the day, like my pioneer ancestors, they're building their house and there's an axe. Of course and there's a fire burning in their house all the time. Of course the mom is going to be worried about the fire. Of course she's going to be worried about the axe. They could cut their hand off. And in fact, my great grandma's brother actually did cut his hand off in the wood mill that their father owned. And I remember reading in her life story, she said, after that, we were just so much more careful. So it's totally normal and natural to be a mother who's concerned about the safety of her kids. Did I make sure that the safety lock was on the door every time? And did I kind of worry about my mom and my mother-in-law taking my kids? Of course. That's normal. That's natural. And it's okay. I didn't avoid and resist it. I was just like, yeah, of course I'm going to be worried about that. Of course I'm going to remind my mom a couple of times. And maybe I didn't even let her drive because I'm like, if it causes me that much grief, I'm not going to worry about it. So do you see what happened is like, I just allowed myself and I gave myself permission to be like, of course, it's totally normal. And this is before I even had life coaching. Okay. And so when you hear the news of the grandpa that was holding the baby and dropped the baby in the airport or whatever, Yes, that might cause some anxious thoughts, of course. So I do really want you to spend some time with this. And as like I said, I'd love to hear your feedback on that. Now, the next thing, and this one's very practical, and this is kind of the third and just kind of an easy thing, is when we teach our kids to do this, we want to do the belly breathing. Now, when and I have coached clients who have had agoraphobia, like they couldn't leave their home. Okay, so sometimes when things come back, they're afraid they're going to go back there. A lot of clients are worried about depression. They're worried if they like acknowledge feelings, then they're going to be depressed and they're going to have on this medication or be hospitalized or whatever. So we've gone over the avoid, resist, and accept, avoid, resist, and those ones. But so when we can hyperventilate, the problem is we don't have a problem breathing in. It's the exhale. So what I want to focus on, and just if you can be there, is like, I'm just exhaling my stale air. So just think about, I need to get rid of the air. And just give yourself more focus on exhaling. And that's going to help you to regulate, because it's not a problem to breathe in. That's our normal human response. But when we can exhale, that's what's going to really help you. Okay. So those are some really practical, tactical strategies. Now, this process works because it gets you out of your lower survival brain. You're not a victim. So we're totally empowered. We're 100% responsible for our own emotions. We're not afraid of our emotions anymore, right? Remember, if we have emotional awareness, we have emotional wellness. I love that. I'm going to use that. Not afraid of emotions. We're confident in ourselves. We increase our emotional vocabulary and stamina for emotional wellness, right? So we have a tolerance for discomfort. We can handle it. If the air conditioning in the car, you know, we can be a little bit uncomfortable. We can have, like, I talk to my clients about hunger. So hunger just comes in waves. It's not a problem. We don't have to push away from them. It's like, yeah, here's some hunger. I'm just feeling some hunger. I'll take care of the hunger. I only eat when I'm actually hungry. Okay. So we just learn that. I was like, oh, I feel some irritation with my kid, or I'm feeling some disappointment with my neighbor. I'm feeling some, disillusionment or whatever. It's like, oh yeah, it's part of being a human. Okay. So the skills that are developed when you do this is you tolerate discomfort and build of discomfort, your ability to have discomfort. You have an emotional vocabulary and stamina. You have a stronger CEO brain. You always are responsible for your feelings. And the results that are created by this is you're totally able to write the story you want and the confidence to move in any direction, in the direction that you want. So you become the author and creator of your own life. So that is our training for today. I'm so glad you were able to join us. Now, how can you build this in your life? You're like, Dara, this sounds amazing. This sounds so good. It is. And it's totally available for you. It really is. It is so much fun to watch my clients transform their lives into how they always, actually, a lot of them didn't even think it was possible to have that kind of life. Okay. So one of the ways that you can do this is you can join me in my pop-up group. It is going to be May 25th to 26th, 29th. And it's called the 1% Club. So 1% of all humans who lose weight keep it off. And there is a reason for that. It's because, like I talked about with this free training, was anxiety. If we don't solve the actual problem, then we are medicating, we're self-medicating, whatever, we're buffering, all of those things with food. We're doing it with other things, but of course I'm a weight loss coach for quilters. So we deal with food. So I actually teach you how to no longer go outside of yourself to try to feel a different emotion. I'm actually teaching you to be aware of what's going on, and then you create the results that you want. Okay. And it's interesting. So when even my clients who work with me, but who don't keep up these tools for themselves, then they relapse, and that's okay. They just have to decide to just put those tools back into practice. It's not a problem. So this pop-up group, I'm going to teach you some tools to start making that change. But so you do want to come. You want to get that emotional vocabulary so you can have emotional wellness. You want to start your road on there. You can also work with me in my group. So my group is, it's closed for now. You can't get in. You can get on the waiting list. It starts June 29th. So you can hold your spot for that one. And it's an incredible program. I love it. It's just, it's life-changing. But again, you got to do the work. You got to put the tools in. I do have a few exclusive one-on-one spots for coaching. That does not happen very often. And so if you want my specific help in getting you to understand my tools and learning how to apply them, I do have the door open for that as well. So that is how you can create those changes for yourself. All right, I have a few minutes to answer some questions. Awesome class. Thank you, Jody. So before you leave, I would love to hear what is the biggest takeaway that you got. And sometimes when I say what is the biggest, you think, or just what is a takeaway? What is something that you are actually going to do? Because my background, I was an elementary school teacher for 10 years. And when I think about actually teaching and learning, I define it as you have changed something in your life because you listened or because you understood a concept. So for me, true change, true learning is when you actually start changing the way you approach your life. So from this free training, even though it's free, there's so much value I gave. What is something that you are going to now do? Be more aware of what I can control. Did you know that you can control pretty much everything? It kind of blows my mind when I say things like that, but it's absolutely true. So husband can say words, people can say all sorts of things, and we always get to decide how we react. I mean, we can't control like our bills, right? I mean, we can to some extent, like we can not use as much electricity or whatever, but we actually always choose, like you can choose that. You'd be like, I'm not gonna pay bills. I'm not gonna live in a house. Like you have consequences of your actions. But I totally want to hear, I gave you so many things to think about. And so sometimes that's one of the problems with the free trainings is it's hard to retain all that. And we don't expect that. It usually is about 20% you can retain from information like this. And that's why I do have the replays and all of that. So what other thoughts do you have from this training? I'd love to hear. I know it's kind of like you feel like you're a little bit under the microscope when you make comments on chats, and that's okay. You don't have to feel pressured, especially if you know they're going to be put on the replay. I totally get it. It's not a problem. Don't feel any pressure. So what I want to say before I go is if there were things in this free training I did that really resonated with you, if there was something that said, oh my gosh, I totally needed to hear that. I want these skills. I want this result. I want to just bring your attention to here before I go. So in this, here we go. So when we have, this is called Worry Road. I call this Worry Road, okay? And I do have an alternative. I have Hope Road that I teach, okay? So if you are avoiding emotions and you are not watching your thoughts, you get to worst case scenario. And that's when you live in anxiety land, okay? So I want you to, you don't have to say it in the chat, that's okay. I would be interested to hear. But are you spending a lot of time avoiding? Are you over social mediaing? Are you drinking? Are you shopping more than you need to shop? Are you eating more? Okay, Nanette, do you have a question? Do you want me to put you on the screen? You have your hand up. What I found interesting is that anxiety is a secondary emotion. Yes. So are you resisting? Are you rushing around? Are you yelling at people? Are you reacting? That was super interesting for me to have that classified that way. Okay. Nanette. Oh, okay. Oh, were you just putting your hand up to, okay. Anxiety is a secondary emotion, right? Okay, no problem. Yeah, so anxiety is an emotion. It's a real emotion, but it's used for fight or flight, right? So if we are not responding to the emotion, anxiety, so it's very much like overwhelm, confusion, those are secondary emotions. Anger, that's a secondary emotion. Okay. All right, ladies, it was so much fun to spend this last hour with you. I am so glad that you came. I'm so glad that you have now a more awareness, and you found all of that. So please sign up for my pop-up group. I can't wait to be your life coach. If you want to work with me in my next program, you can prepay and claim your spot. I do have an application process. I also have the ability to have a consult for 20 minutes, talk to me about any questions that you have. And like I said, I haven't opened the door for my one-on-one, but I do have it open. And if that is something you're interested in, of course, you can contact me and we can talk about if that's going to be the right fit for you. All right. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.